happy to be here. Thanks for the time to listen. I'm going to talk about a few specific ways which I personally feel that regional government, particular ways that we can fulfill a set of needs with respect to pipeline safety, even outside of the issues of siting, which Tom talked about, and many of the challenges that happened in Berkshire paralleled in our region as well. So I'm going to describe some of the specific activities we took as a TAG grantee over the past year, and hopefully share some lessons learned. That's actually a picture I took on my commute home. That's actually a Liberty pipeline marker. They're the local distribution company in our region, and that sign is a locally designated river. It's the Sauhegan River in Merrimack, New Hampshire. So similar to the commission, the planning agencies in Massachusetts, there are 9 RPCs in New Hampshire enabled under state statute. They're political subdivisions of the state, which makes them public agencies. They're nonprofit by nature, and they're a voluntary association, so there's no requirement that communities participate. Most do. There are some examples of opt-outs in the land of live free or die. We're advisory, meaning we don't have any regulatory authority, geographically distinct from counties, and subject to the New Hampshire Public Records Law, which sets principle in particular with respect to how we handle our GIS information. Nashua Regional Planning, we're the oldest, founded in 1959 of all the RPCs. We're also the smallest, 13-member communities, just over 200,000 people, 350 square miles, about 11 FTEs. The landscape in our region is a mixture of urban and rural. We're only 45 miles north of Boston, which makes us essentially a Boston exurb, and a quarter of our residents commute south over the border into Massachusetts for work. I mentioned Liberty Utilities. They're the local distribution company. They serve about 40,000 customers in our region. And in December 2014, this map illustrates, well, I should point out on the right-hand side, the orange line work is the existing Tennessee Concord lateral system that flows from Dracut north up into Concord and beyond. It's a 20-inch and 12-inch loop. And then in this December of 2014, as we discussed, the Northeast Energy Direct project was proposed. It would have introduced about 30 miles of 36-inch interstate transmission natural gas main line, and an additional 5 miles of lateral through very rural Mason, New Hampshire, south back into Massachusetts. So for sure, this proposal was the motivation behind our TAG grant, and as we wrestled with the siting issues that Tom talked about, we also felt that it was our responsibility in many ways to arm our communities with as much pipeline safety information as we could, under the supposition that if it wasn't the NED project, it could be another project in the future that could be presented to us. So we did follow in Berkshire's footsteps. They shared with us some of their application structure when we were preparing our request to PHMSA. We were really trying to reach as many stakeholders as we could, thinking this could be a one-shot deal for us to do as much as we could. So specifically, we said, okay, we need to reach out to the land use planning community. I mean, that's our core competency as the Regional Planning Commission. We need to reach the community development directors, the town admins, and the local planning boards. Also, our emergency preparedness and first responders. And it was clear that there were many GIS stakeholders reaching out to the commission looking for GIS and mapping data, and we need to serve their needs. And then number 4 would be the general public, in particular those residing in the more rural areas of our region where there was a lack of underground utility infrastructure, and for that reason, sort of a lack of culture and awareness of one-call and dig-safe procedures. So this screenshot shows some of the documents we prepared for the audience of land use professionals. This is like the most distilled crib note version of the National PIPA Land Use Best Practices Guidance documents. I know Pipeline Safety has done a good job at kind of creating guides to that guide. Well, this is the guide to the guide to the guide. This is, essentially the most abbreviated crash course in some of those ideas. On the left was a checklist, essentially 9 things that communities can do immediately to better prepare for pipelines, things like establishing points of contact, getting your mapping information organized, empowering someone to halt unsafe digging activity. On the right is a more in-depth guide. It was 8 pages, and that was geared towards the volunteer local planning boards, assuming that there was interest in sort of taking pipeline safety a bit further. It discusses things like evaluating subdivision site plan regulations, requiring additional documentation from the pipeline operator, and introduces the idea of pipeline safety consultation zones. Has our brand on it, the NRPC brand. It's sort of our endorsement of this information, and we felt that this was sort of the limits to the sort of audience that we were going to be able to affect. We also took a look at the national model ordinance language for the pipeline safety planning areas and adapted that in consult with our legal counsel to the New Hampshire context. We first had to just establish that under state law, these were actually explicitly enabled. We're not a home rule state, and that means that basically what communities do in terms of ordinances has to be explicitly enabled under the state procedures. And then, we adapted it further to incorporate references to specific New Hampshire RSAs. Here's our region again, the blue outline. It just so happens that it aligns exactly with the public health, Greater Nashua Public Health Hospital catchment area, which is one of 2 geographies that also define the LAPC, the Local Emergency Planning Committee. The other geography being what's in green, that's essentially the fire mutual aid network in our region. And Nashua Station 2 is the headquarters of the Hazardous Materials Response, and they're under the jurisdiction of the Office of Emergency Management in the city of Nashua. So it was actually a quite fortuitous partnership. The Commission isn't necessarily used to working with emergency preparedness and first responders, but it made a lot of sense in this context. The director of the Emergency Management Office in Nashua has been trained using Phil Oak's Train the Trainer program, which is the PHMSA curriculum through the National Association of Fire Marshals. So he used a blend of that curriculum plus the PAPA, which is the Pipeline Awareness. Thank you. The acronyms, GIS. So, we arranged a series of 3 workshops, 3 hours each, and reached over 50 first responders and public officials about all aspects of pipeline and hazardous materials response, which I think was a success considering the majority of those are volunteers. We also developed templates for emergency planning. These are essentially annexes that can be incorporated into a community's existing emergency operations plan. And these templates are available online on our website. I'll give you the URL. And as far as the implementation goes, we then went ahead and with the city actually adapted those templates and completed them on behalf of the communities. So those are in draft, and the communities have them as references. So like a lot of regional planning commissions, there's a long history of doing GIS. Since the 1980s, NRPC has been doing GIS. We essentially function as the de facto regional GIS base map. There are only 4 other communities in our region that have any kind of GIS investment, only one of those which has any GIS professional staff on the payroll. So it became this is an example of our online GIS viewer with our parcel information, our roads, buildings that we maintain and perpetuate mostly through the availability of transportation planning dollars. But it became pretty clear as the NED proposal started going down the siting process with FERC that I needed a better way of sharing the information that we have at the Commission in our GIS. I was getting daily requests from everybody from novice GIS enthusiasts to consultants, other agencies, all working on their response to the proposal. And so what we ended up doing using the support of the TAG was to implement what Esri calls their open data portal. It's basically a web-based framework, and there's no software costs involved. Essentially, the costs are just our effort to implement, and it's, you know, we had our viewer, when you could go in, you could see the proposed pipeline route, but for people who are really interested in the data, they can now visit our website and access fully documented data sets with all the limitations described. And in particular, we basically mined our GIS for information about where hard to locate populations would be located. I mean, hard to evacuate populations would be located. So everything from schools, private, public, charter, university, daycares, hospitals with non-ambulatory populations. We made sure to brush up on those data sets, get them documented, and get them available to people. And basically I said to, you know, both Liberty and Kinder Morgan, like, here is our data, like, take it, because it's my feeling that it behooves no one to be working with erroneous information with respect to that. We got hooked in with the National Pipeline Mapping System, obtained data sets from PHMSA, actually reached out to Kinder Morgan, myself too, and, you know, asked for additional attribute information, things like MOP, operating pressure. I have to say that I was surprised at the amount of cooperation that I received, no doubt because of the fact that we had the backing of the PHMSA grant. I do think that that was a facilitating factor, for sure. These are some reference maps that we created, again, general purpose. You can download them from the website. And then lastly, on the issue of promoting safe digging, we coordinated with the New Hampshire Dig Safe office, and they provided these promotional materials, wallet cards, a brochure, keychains. We made sure that all town halls in the region and all libraries had a stash of these to hand out. And then we ran a social media campaign using the Common Ground Alliance toolkit, which is freely available online. We did that throughout the month of April, promoting safe digging. This is one of the areas where we had to sort of rethink our strategy. Once the Kinder Morgan proposal was suspended, our initial idea was to do a targeted marketing campaign using our GIS, reach out to the affected landowners and talk about Dig Safe. But once that project was suspended, we decided to sort of recalibrate, and we essentially repeated our outreach, replenished all the materials that we had at the town halls and the libraries, which had gone. They were gone. So refilled those and reran the social marketing messaging around August 11th, Dig Safe Day. I wish I thought about it. I'm not responsible for that. So, you know, as far as lessons learned, I mean, timing is everything. At one point, we were actually considering maybe delaying our application to the TAG program another year just to let the NED process play out a little bit more and get closer to the point where construction was going to actually become a reality. And I'm glad we didn't do that. With the, you know, future of the TAG program and sort of uncertain at this point. You know, it was fortunate that we didn't do that. When Kinder Morgan's project was suspended, unfortunately, the sort of urgency that we had from our communities went away. It's human nature, I think. And I've seen a couple presentations today that have sort of renewed my interest in using maybe maps to help people understand that, you know, that's incredibly short-sighted to just sort of think, okay, that on to the next issue, you know, the pipeline isn't my worry anymore. So I'd like to talk to more people about that, if there's interest, how we can keep sort of interest in pipeline going when you don't have those sensational stories to talk about. We haven't had one in our region, thankfully. Location, you know, especially through our partnership with the emergency preparedness folks, you know, it really revealed so many data gaps. All data is local, you know, all data is local, and even things like, okay, NRPC, do you have a regional cisterns fire cisterns layer? Oh, we don't know where the fire cisterns are in our region. Okay, put that on the list, and there's multiple examples of that, and so we have kind of a wish list of things now, and starting to strategize a little bit how we might be able to address some of those through our hazard mitigation efforts, which is a FEMA-funded effort. And I know PHMSA has guidance about the confluence between pipeline safety planning and hazard mitigation, sort of an all hazards approach, which I think is appropriate. I think we could play a role that way. And then lastly, don't go it alone. Again, we're successful because of our partnerships. And I will say, for most of our activities and events that we held throughout the grant period, we did have attendees both from Kinder Morgan and from Liberty Gas. And that was a good thing. That was a very good thing. It showed that they were taking us seriously, and then also they were there to answer questions about their system, the technical aspects. And we're the lay people. We don't know those things. So that was very much a good thing, in my opinion. So my contact information and then at that URL, all the products that I described are available. You can take a look. Thank you very much.